Welcome to the Absite Smackdown Podcast. We'll talk clinical scenarios, Absite facts, and interesting general surgery knowledge. Now, let's get to it.
Hey guys, it's me, Jess, your host of Absite Smackdown Podcast. And with me, as always, Dr. David Cashmere, and also my favorite, Dr. Rhonda Barsoom. Hey guys, how are you doing today?
It's a great day. The weather's great. And we have a busy week coming up this week around school where I teach. So, let's get to it. That's how things look on my end.
The Absite Smackdown Podcast. Visit the Smackdown at absitesmackdown.com.
Dr. Barsoom, I heard that you had a very busy week this last week too. What were you doing?
I did have a busy week. Well, we were doing a lot of general surgery. I'm on a rotation where we do a lot of robotic surgery, actually. So done a lot of robotic choles and hernia repairs in the last week. And then yesterday was particularly busy. We had just a very, very large abdominal wall hernia. We had to do a component separation, and it was a very rewarding case, actually. I hope he does well.
That is awesome. So the upcoming week, again, is going to be busy, all for different reasons. Dr. K, why don't you talk a little bit, because it is an important week for a lot of people and where you're at. So can we talk about that just a little bit?
Jessica, and to all the listeners out there, a lot of you probably know what it's like going through medical school and trying to prep for an eventual residency position. And this week is when the match kind of goes through for a lot of the different programs and specialties and other large things we go into next after medical school. And so this is kind of the culmination of the week for the students about what they've been through. And it just takes a lot of stuff, both for their faculty advisors and the students themselves. It's just a very unique process we have in medicine to try to place people in different positions. So much goes into it, so much preparation. And that's all coming kind of to fruition this week.
The Absite Smackdown Podcast, bringing you the best of your Absite review.
So Dr. Barsoom, I guess you, with your program, you were sitting in and helping interview applicants and working with that. Am I correct in understanding that?
That is absolutely correct, Jessica. Yes, I helped interview the candidates coming in for our program this year, as well as sat in on the rank meeting that allowed us to determine which applicants ranked in our, top third, bottom third, middle third, and which applicants we just thought were phenomenal enough that they were in our top 5 people.
What is it that you think it takes now to be one of those top 5 people?
It takes a lot, because most of our applicants, and by the time we have weeded out enough applicants that we're in the interview process, all these applicants are just phenomenal. Their scores, their extracurriculars, their letters of recommendation, where they're coming from medical school. So it's very, very difficult, and it's just small minutia really during the interview day itself that helps determine which of those applicants rank in the top 5 versus top 10 versus the middle third of our group. Things like their conversation skills and the way they approach difficult questions, and the way it's a vibe really. And it's not just us interviewing them, but also them interviewing us and showing their interest in our program as well, because every program has to fit the candidate as well.
I think, Dr. K, that you've talked about it before, kind of being like a funnel, starts out wide and then it gets really small. From your perspective on your side of being what you do, what is your take on this?
Well, I'll go through with my ex-program director hat on first. And the top of that funnel is super wide. We would get more than 300 applications for 3 what are called categorical and 3 preliminary seats in our residency for our first year class. When we started the residency, we had to do it off cycle, and we had about really 2 or 3 weeks to fill a class. It was truly an important but difficult task. Now, when you do go through the match, like we did eventually, you'll still get 300 some applications. It's really hard, like Rhonda said, to differentiate who will be not just a great future surgical colleague, but who will fit well in the particular residency you have, the kind of center it is, where in the country it is, the mix of personalities, all these things. And one of the things we use are audit filters. The electronic residency application system allows us to create certain filters based on whether the people that we're looking for went to a medical school in the continental US, for example, whether they had MD or DO training, or whether it could be either. We could filter them by any particular facet of their application. And we would collaboratively in our residency create these strainers or filters to kind of narrow this immense number of applications down to something manageable. Whether you had a letter of recommendation from the chair of your surgical program, all these things are filters that you can create if memory serves, and they can get really specific. And that will then hand you often a significant list of applicants that you then have to kind of continue on to suss out who fits over 3 days or more of interviews scheduled throughout the typical surgical schedule for the department. So really, just to answer your question more directly, what a big task, what a challenge it is. And like Rhonda said, you often have these really small items that differentiate who fits and who doesn't.
So with each program, how you're talking about it's a good fit, it might not necessarily be the final thing for each program. Like they might all have different little minutiae that make them fit right. So when you were doing it and you had that hat on, what was something that was your little extra that you wanted?
Well, we had a unique program in that we were starting from no program. So after we got through the filters, we looked for things on the application that indicated this person had the temperament to start something new. Many people in healthcare are excellent at being great students and quite bright. And we really needed someone who'd shown to some degree they were a self-starter. They knew how messy it could be when you start something new and how things are imperfect, who had the patience and temperament to build something and desire to kind of build something new. We really tried to select for that. We had a very unique situation and we needed some very unique people to help build that.
That's pretty awesome. So Dr. Barsoom, was there something that you guys were particularly looking for as you were sitting in on those that you had in your mind of what you think it takes now to get into certain programs, or specifically your program?
Yes. So as Dr. K said, our program is actually quite new as well. So we also had to balance the fantastic learners with those who have really good leadership abilities and leadership or the ability to lead well, because there's a lot of changes in a new program and you have to be able to adapt to these changes, and as well as lead your junior residents, because we're not just interviewing a candidate for the first year spot, we're interviewing candidates to stay with us for 5 years. And at some point, these candidates will also have their junior residents. So you have to be able to kind of pick out those students who are fantastic learners and will pick up quickly and adjust to their surroundings, but at the same time will have the capability of also teaching and passing down what they have learned and how they have adjusted to their more junior residents.
The Absite Smackdown Podcast is going live. Reserve your seat for our upcoming live Absite Review Conference. Can't travel? On call? No problem. This online conference is recorded so you can catch up anytime. Reserve your spot by visiting us at absitesmackdown.com and selecting latest news for more information.
It seems like a lot of responsibility to me. So is there anything either one of you want to say, just like as we're getting ready to wrap up, that advice or just sites that you've seen that you would like to give to our listeners right now?
Yeah, there are a couple things I feel really strongly about as a previous program director. Surgery is kind of interesting because we have two pathways. We have a categorical and a preliminary pathway. Preliminary colleagues join us, but may or may not progress on to the second year and then beyond. In fact, it can be very challenging for them because they show up and then almost immediately have to reapply and do all this paperwork, and they need some extra support. So I encourage the listeners out there for the prelims that they know, et cetera, to be supportive, and all the people who work at different programs to be supportive and take a minute to think about designing your program in a way that supports the preliminary applicant. That's one thing I'll share. The next thing I'll share is that there's evidence that the match rate, the eventual match rate into a first or second choice for the people who go through, the colleagues who go through the preliminary pathway, is as high as 1/3 of them. And I say as high as because a lot of the time people feel like if you take a preliminary position, rather, the preliminary positions often don't go on to continue on in surgery, and they may not treat them as appropriately as you should for future colleagues. And also preliminary residents may get a bit down and say, well, I'm not sure that I'll be able to go on in this. It can be really challenging. I want to share that the numbers aren't as bleak as I thought at first. They're up to about 30% or so in different research papers you can look up on PubMed that eventually go on to get that position that they want, which is really good. It's a very difficult road to hoe. But for those medical students listening this week, if they are not able to obtain a categorical position, I encourage first the programs to treat the prelims appropriately and even take extra care with them. But also the students, if they don't happen to match into a categorical position, that does not mean if they do choose to take a preliminary position and go that road, that often requires a lot of fortitude to do. And it does not mean that they are 100% ruled out. It's actually, the numbers are a little better than I thought intuitively. I thought the eventual match rate was really low, 5 to 10% intuitively, but it's actually about 30% or so in some series. So just to say, if they do opt to go into it, it's not quite as bad as I thought, at least, and they should be respected if they do choose that pathway.
That was very eloquent. Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Barsoom? He said it so well. I don't even know what to say.
Dr. K always says it so well, but yes, our program is actually very good at, fixing our schedule so that the preliminary residents get the most face-to-face time with our core faculty early on, so that the letters that they use to reapply come fall of their first year are actually a lot stronger. So I feel like that's something my program has done very well over the last couple of years. We also, as now senior and chief residents, what we try to do is adjust our month-to-month schedule in order to accommodate interview dates for these residents, as well as understand that this week is also going to be rough for them, and that maybe not give them as much responsibility, knowing that this week they'll be making a lot of decisions and finding out things. It is very important for a program to have a lot of support of their preliminary residents, because like Dr. K said, the match rate is actually quite high. As a matter of fact, most of our preliminary residents over the last few years have gone on to categorical surgery positions and have done very, very well. So I'm super proud of how my program has been dealing with this. The other thing is, surgery is a difficult field, and knowing that someone is very interested in surgery and showing that interest during their interview day as well as their personal statement can go very, very far. Things like interest letters and things like just proving or knowing how much you are interested in surgery and reapplying to surgery can mean a lot, I think, to the interviewer and the program itself when we're doing our rank list, sometimes even more than scores and letters.
Get more Absite content in your daily routine. Visit us on Instagram at daily.absite.fact, on Facebook at Absite Smackdown, or LinkedIn at Absite Smackdown. And you can catch the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or any place you listen to your favorites. Don't forget our YouTube channel, Absite Smackdown.
Well, I think that's very well said. I'll share that the applicants I had who did their interview with me and said, there's absolutely nothing else I'm going to do. So you either take me for this program as we started up, or I'm going to continue looking and I'm not going to stop looking, and I'll probably just be back. I only heard that a few times. Surprisingly, I thought I would hear it more, but it was very impactful. And even students sometimes who did not have the best scores, et cetera, we kind of had a point system for kind of how we did things. And that was big points. If you really said, look, this is absolutely it for me, that really shows clear interest, along with, as Rhonda said, working in the department and these other things. So one important component for us was interest. And I was surprised I didn't hear it more, but to me anyway, it really meant something when someone said, this is absolutely what I'm called to do. I have zero doubt. And I'm going to be back. So you might as well just take me now because this is going to happen. That meant a lot.
The Absite Smackdown podcast is based on the best-selling review book, Absite Smackdown, the only Absite review with an entire video review course included. Visit AbsiteSmackdown.com and pick it up today.
You want to invest in the people that you know are going to give it everything and like try hard and want it, because, you know, if someone's not sure like that, with surgery being such a difficult program, you know, how are they going to get through?
Yeah, and I would add as we wrap up here that a lot of people do want it. The numbers for surgery since the advent of the 80-hour work week have been such that it is very sought after. I will share that before the 80-hour work week, and actually it may have been my year or the year after, I actually applied and became a categorical resident in the absolute lowest number of applications that General Surgery had seen for a long time. So I kind of got in that side door just in time before it got to be, a tougher applicant pool. And I'll share that in looking at the applicants who come through today and then comparing that to kind of our pool, I think that the level of competition for general surgical positions is just staggering now. The quality that comes through, the people, everything from their board scores on down, really has kind of upped its game since I crept in through the side door years ago. So it's really been something to see, and it makes me continue to be excited for the field in the future, because the substrate that's coming in, man, it's just, they're really good.
Yeah, I wish Dr. Colton Lee wasn't on vacation, because he has a really interesting match story and how he came to where he is. So we'll have to get him to talk about that sometime, because it is really, really great. All right. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Does anyone else want to say anything, or am I going to wrap it up?
Well, I get asked a lot, is it worth it? Though going through the whole process, going through residency, and to anyone out there who wants to be a surgeon, it is absolutely worth it. I can't imagine doing anything else, anything more rewarding in my life. And while it's difficult, the trip is worth the results for sure.
Especially after cases like yesterday, right? Awesome. Well, right? All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on. And as always, don't forget, #Absite Smackdown.
Thanks for listening to the Absite Smackdown podcast. Visit us at AbsiteSmackdown.com for more great Absite facts.